So, welcome back. We are taking the next step in our Photoshop adventures today, digging into some of the special effects that it has for us. And hopefully by the time this tutorial is done, you're going to have something similar to this. You can call it a water effect, or molten metal, or anything that kind of looks liquid. And in this case, it's very shiny, so maybe it looks a little bit more metallic in nature. But depending on how we adjust the filters, it could look anywhere from this to something very soft and fuzzy. This one has some little hard edges. So that's kind of where we're going today. Let's see what we can figure out. Most of the tutorial today has to do with filters. So if you look up here at this filter menu, there are multiple different filters. Photoshop has hundreds. There's even more out on the web you could download and install into your version of Photoshop if you're needing something that you can't find in here. So here's several categories, all of which have multiple other filters underneath these. So to get started with those, we've got to make a new document. So let's start out today with File, New. Set your document like this one, 400 pixels by 400 pixels, 72 for the resolution. Click OK. And we'll start with this little square. Alright, so let's start applying some of those filters. To begin, white isn't going to do. We need to add some color. So we're going to go to the filter menu. We're going to choose Render Clouds. So just like that, many filters in Photoshop can't just do it on a white background. You have to have some kind of pixels or some kind of color or something in there for the filter to affect on. So just by doing this cloud filter, we get some pixels automatically and just like a little soft, blobby kind of nature to get us going. So we'll start there. All right, and then the next step, we're going to go to the filter menu again, and under the blur category, we're going to choose radial blur. Okay, and on this one, we're going to set the amount to 38. I've done this ahead of time, so I kind of have a really good idea of how much is a really good effect. We're going to keep the method on spin. You could switch it to zoom and have more like a starburst effect. We're just going to kind of do this circle thing because we want this metal to look liquid and ripply. Good is fine for what we're doing on this project. And then you're going to get something like that. So those clouds now have turned into kind of a swirled look, starting to become more look like liquid, although right now they probably look more like cotton candy. And then we're going to go to another blur filter. And this time we're going to choose Gaussian blur. Gaussian blur is just kind of like an overall softening blur. We're going to set the radius to 2 pixels. Click OK, and it just softens it up slightly, takes off the hard edges. And then our next filter is kind of defining the ripples a little bit. So we're going to go to Filter, Sketch, Base Relief. All right, so the base relief, you can already start to see how it kind of sharpens up the contrast between the lights and the darks in this swirl and kind of brings them to light a little bit. We're going to set our detail to about 13, kind of what I already have set here, and the smoothness around 10. The light source you can switch any way you want, from coming straight from the top or from the left or from the top right. Every corner, every option is available for you here. So I do believe for ours we're going to go with the bottom right. That looks pretty cool. All right, click OK. Next step. This is probably the most fun filter of them all. We're going to apply a chrome effect. So under Filter, we're going to go to the Sketch menu one more time and down to Chrome. All right, and now you can kind of see all the little different color variation, value variation edges now become very liquid looking and almost thick because of and shiny because of the way that this filter adjusts the pixels. Detail over here, let's go up to about 5. Give it lots of detail. Smoothness is set on, oh, let's take it down. Not so smooth, but maybe about like a 2. That looks cool. We'll leave that there. And then click OK to apply the effect. All right, so that's a good start. Next, we're going to duplicate this layer. So up on the layer menu, choose Duplicate Layer. And now I have 2 copies of it. And on this copied version, I'm going to do some hue and saturation. So I'm going to come down here to the adjustment layers, choose hue and saturation, and check this colorize box. And what that's going to allow me to do is just use the cycle of colors in the hue slider here to pick what color I want my molten metal or swirling water to look like. So for this one, I think I'm going to go with something a little bit more watery. So right about there sounds good. Looks like maybe water from a pool or some maybe molten chrome metal that might be colored just for a car or something. You can also use saturation to kind of deepen the color a little bit. I think I'm going to do that. Deepen the color a little, and lightness, maybe you could even lighten it up or darken it up a bit. Click OK when you like that setting. And then the next thing we want to do is take this copy, so we get to click back here on the copy of this layer and change its blend mode. So instead of just normal, when you just normal, these two background layers and the copy are just covering up each other. So by changing the blend mode, we can make them interact with each other a little bit. So we're going to choose color dodge, and that means it's going to lighten up some of the areas, dodging away. But as it looks there, that's way too bright, so we're going to just take it down to maybe 15% of that, and then you can kind of see the difference there. So as I click them on and off, you can see what it looks like when the background copy is turned on and when it's turned off. All right, just gives it a little bit of, maybe a little bit of lightness. All right, next thing we want to do is flatten this whole thing together. So I'm going to go up to the layer menu here and go all the way down to flatten. Now you can see in the layers palette, it just becomes one layer. All those different things have been squished together into one file, and that's helpful for going on to the next step so that we're not just affecting one layer at a time, now we're affecting this whole thing. All right, so here's where we're going to kind of create this little square here. We're going to make it possible to have it seamlessly tile. So if I want to do more of a background than just like a 400 by 400 pixel square, maybe I have like the entire background of my computer I want to use this on, I'm going to set it up so that I can fill the whole area and repeat, and you'll never be able to see where any of these corners or edges are. All right, so the way to do that is to go to the filter menu again, and under the other category, we're going to choose something called offset. Okay, so I already did this one time, so the settings are already in here. It remembers what I did before. But what you want to do is divide, I made a 400 by 400 here, so dividing that in half, 200 by 200 is just offsetting it over 200 pixels and down 200 pixels. So it's taking the entire picture and breaking it up into quadrants, and now it can be moved over, and so this piece will automatically match up with this little spot right here when it seamlessly reproduces. This little nub right here will match up with this little piece. You can kind of tell where they kind of hook together. All right, make sure wraparound is chosen. Click OK. And now I'm just going to kind of mess with it, blend these together a little bit so they don't look like four little squares randomly put together. They look all like one piece. So to do that, I'm going to do another filter. We're going to go down to distort. There we go, distort, and choose twirl. And I'm just going to twirl like 120 degrees, something like that. You can see it's just a little slight swirl of them all together. Okay, there they go. And it's still a little kind of defined right there, so I'm also going to go to filter, distort, and kind of go down to like zigzag and just choose a little bit of zigzag, 10, maybe 15. Click OK. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now it kind of looks like they're kind of swirling but kind of waving, kind of rigid at the same time. And these edges will all still match up with another part, so when they fill, they match perfectly from one another. You can see right here, this little piece is going to match up perfectly with this edge when they repeat next to one another. All right, so almost done. So let's save this, and we're going to go to We're going to actually select everything here. Control A is a shortcut for select, or you can go to select, all, same thing. And we're going to go to the edit menu and choose something called define a pattern. So this little swatch now, this little square, we can add to the pattern gallery. So let's just call it ripples. Okay, so it's saved in there now. And if at this time I go to opening a new document, let's make a big one. Let's make it a full piece of paper, 8.5 by 11. Make the pixels a little bit smaller. Okay, now I have a full sheet of paper and I want that little tile to fill in there. So I'm going to go to the paint bucket tool, and then up here, instead of foreground color, which is just my little swatches here, I'm going to pick something I've saved in there. So I'm going to choose patterns, and there's a whole gallery of them that Photoshop already has in here, but oh, here's the one I made. Okay, so I'll choose that, and then when I click, it fills that pattern seamlessly in the entire space. So that's zigzag wave, or excuse me, not zigzag wave, metal ripples or water ripple effect. You can just make some subtle adjustments and change the way they look. Here I did a different one in purples. Didn't do much different other than way back at the beginning, instead of the twirl, I chose ripples and ocean ripples and waves to give it a little bit of a different combination. And then when they filled the page, they kind of look a little bit more like they're waving or swirling. I called this one grape jelly. So there it is. A different effect that you can apply, you just using a whole bunch of filters. You can go back and just use the original square like this one, maybe only repeat it a couple of times to create a unique effect for yourself. Every time you do it, you'll get something different. So give it a try, see what you can make that is completely unique, just applying a bunch of filters together. All right, have a good time.